Depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the new episode on our podcast. We are going to talk about something a little different today. One of the reasons why I started the podcast, parenting. This episode is great for first-time parents, couples who are thinking of having children in the near future, or if you just want to understand what parents, in particular women, need to go through during pregnancy and beyond. We're building a global community to inspire, and we believe in the power of love, positivity, and inclusion. If you enjoy the content, you can subscribe to our channel and become one of our supporters. My guest today is Tran. May and I met back in Sydney, I believe in 2004, 17 years ago. We did marketing together, and I was that introverted kid who was really shy and studied in front of classroom whenever I was asked to speak. And my memory of May was a really kind person who always has a smile on her face. May is a successful marketer, and about a couple of years ago, she left corporate world and started Parent Poppin. Since then, she has created a community in Australia to reduce isolation and improve the well-being of first-time parents in Australia. Welcome, May.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Now, it's my great pleasure. Let's begin by talking and sharing a bit more about how we met.
Yeah, sure. Oh, you're testing my memory here. 17 years.
I think it's been, 16, 17 years ago, right?
Yeah, about then. It's a long time. I still can't believe that 37 years this year. That's crazy.
Same age as you. I keep hearing from my wife that once you become a mother, you sort of lose some of your brain cells and you lose some of your memories. I don't know if that's true for you.
Yeah, I think a mother, the big factor, and I think also father as well, to a certain extent, because if you don't sleep enough, then you ought to not function as well. Because I heard that we have a lot of mums coming through, and we always joke that in prison they used to torture people. So the biggest torture instrument is not to let you sleep, and then to make sure you don't sleep, and then you confess to anything, even to things you don't do, because not sleeping is quite tiring, and it's one of the biggest issues that new parents face.
Yeah. So why did you start Parent Poppin? What is the vision there, and why did you leave your corporate job?
Yeah, sure. So Parent Poppin is something really close to my heart, and I started it to fill a social gap. Because having a new baby, and especially having your first baby, is a massive change for parents, and your life pretty much turned upside down. And I know mine did. So before I had Caden, I live a pretty typical life of a city worker. I normally work, and then I go for Friday night drinks, go to the beach for the weekend, catch up with friends, go to festival. The biggest thing is I only had myself to look after. But then, first few months of having Caden, I just remember all I did was feeding, settling him to sleep, and then changing nappy. So my life is pretty much divided in 3 hours slot of doing those activities, and pretty much repeat them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And just every time, it's such a constant learning curve. Every time I felt like I've got this and I know what to do, then Caden learned new tricks, and then I'm out of my depth again. So it's a massive change, and I don't know about where you are now in Hong Kong, but in Australia, the whole parenting journey, there's a really big emphasis on the birth, and then after birth, I feel like people just assume that your mother or father instincts going to kick in and you know what to do. There are a few helpful services in Australia, like the mums group, program that they've got in place, but broadly, once you leave the hospital, you're on your own. And generally, the way society structure is that if you have issues, then you get help. So if your arm hurts from carrying your bub, you can go in to see a physio, or
it's very reactive.
Yeah, very reactive, and I don't think anyone have actually sit down and think, this is such a big change for parents, and even though they're parents, they're humans too, and they need help and they need looking after. So I really started Parent Poppin to give parents a space where, a little safe haven where they can relax, have a cup of tea, coffee while they listen to jazz music, so they feel like there's a bit of normality in their life, and they don't feel like they are judged because their kids are screaming in the background. Because if you go to a normal cafe, you're very, very conscious. Mm-hmm. And then we're also, one of the biggest challenges with parents is isolation. So we connect the parents that come through our doors. Many mums and dads of our mums and dads have met through Parent Poppin and have become good friends. We also run parenting classes, little mini treats like high tea, cheese and wine, mini massages, just to help parents feel a bit normal like themselves. Why I left corporate? I think long story. I'll try to keep it short. I feel like I worked in corporate for about 10 years, and jobs are nice and secure. In marketing, there are lots and lots of perks. I got to attend the Sydney Olympic front row for free, and it was just really nice and special.
Very nice.
But you don't always get to work on projects that you want to work on. In my very last job, there were, I think, 6 restructures in the 5 years I was there. So sometimes it feels like you keep on going and you really want to see the results, but you don't really get to see at the end some of the times, and you don't feel like you make a difference. Sometimes there are opportunities in the corporate world, but it's a bit harder to come by. So there was an opportunity for redundancy just after I gave birth to Taiwan. So I took the opportunity and I went to Amsterdam to upskill. And then I also worked with a bunch of startups. I was hoping to go back to Sydney and focus more on startups where I can make a difference. But then I was working at a co-working space, and the owner actually said, they had a few cancellations, so they can rent out it's a very beautiful co-working space for very cheap to the people who work there. And immediately all I wanted to do was to hold an event for new parents and do something to help them. I did hold some test events, but I didn't end up holding it at that venue because it wasn't baby friendly. But that was the start of my journey with Parent Poppin. I guess I always had it at the back of my mind that I wanted to do something to help, but I never wanted to own my business because I know it's risky. I hear from everyone that there's no annual leave, which is a big no for me. But I guess it's when you feel strongly about something, when you care about something enough, you kind of throw all the caution to the wind and just go and do what you feel is right.
Yep. There's this old cliche, if you're doing something that you're passionate in, you'll always do a good job.
Yeah,
and
I think so. I believe so.
Yeah, I think the traditional education hasn't really focused on parenting as such. The point that you mentioned about, how we have to sort of act on the spot and just be quite reactive to a lot of new skills and I guess new developments that we need to help create in order to foster an environment so that we can nurture the next generation. Becoming a first-time father has had a huge impact on me. And that also, one of the incidents that happened to my son, and I don't know if I shared with you before, but the day before he turned 3 months, he suffocated for about 5 minutes. So,
oh my goodness, it's so tough.
So there was one evening around 10 o'clock in the evening, he just started crying and it escalated really quickly. As soon as I picked him up, he started frothing up in his mouth and he was choking. And then very quickly, he wasn't responding. His body was turning purple, was turning blue. And then we had to run out to our neighbors and they helped us call emergency. I mean, luckily he's all well and good now, but thinking back, that experience really inspired me and sort of made me relook at the world through the lens of a small child. And that was one of the reasons why I started doing podcasts, because I think these sort of messages, like the story that you went through, can resonate with a lot of people. And when an unfavorable incident happens in our lives, sometimes we need the support from others. Sometimes we need to hear more stories from others to give us new perspectives. So yeah, I'm sure you went through a lot when you had your first child. So did our family, and I believe most parents hopefully they can find meaning through these challenges. Really appreciate, I guess, what our parents had gone through when they were raising us. There's an old Chinese proverb, right? Once you have a kid, you will need to support them for 100 years and worry for them for 99 years. For me, I think you have to worry for them for 101 years, including the time they are in the mother's tummy.
Yeah, it is. And I remember when I was at university and I went off to Cambodia and Thailand by myself. And I found my mom very annoying because she was so worried and I thought she was a joy killer. But then now, after I have Kaden, I know what it's like. I feel like I'm probably going to be worse than her. I probably will hire a private detective or, a security guard, just like hanging at the back just in case something happened, if I can.
Yeah.
You understand your parents a lot more.
Yeah. And speaking of support, right? And I think there's a distinct difference with pre and postnatal support, at least in Hong Kong, comparing that to Australia. So right after, it's quite common in places like Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan to get a confinement service after the woman has given birth. And you can engage this confinement lady, usually ladies, they can come and visit your house. They can either work 9 to 5 or they can work 24 hours. And all they do is, they stay with you and they cook for you, they care for the mother, and they can stay with the first-time mother for a period of generally minimum of 1 month, but some people can go as long as half a year. So I don't know if that sort of confinement service is available in Australia.
I think it is, but to a very limited audience. I've seen it somewhere, but it's not common. So a normal scenario for parents in Australia is that you would stay. Well, after you give birth, you either stay in hospital anywhere between 1 to 5 days, depends on whether you're private or public, and then you pretty much go home. Normally, mums would take between 4 months to a year off, and the standard entitlement for dad or another carer is 2 weeks. So I think this was very scary for me, and it was one of the things that in mental health hospitals and where I got my postnatal anxiety is because you've got support for probably first week or 2, where most likely your husband or your partner will be home, and then they'll be gone, and then you're left with this baby, and you're still recovering. Because I was lucky that
Do you have it natural?
Yeah, I had a natural birth, but for mums who have a C-section, it's going to take a long time. But I was so tired. I was still exhausted after 6 weeks, and I was so scared after 2 weeks because there's no one around to help. Or I guess I didn't think before birth. I thought I'm so capable of doing everything on my own. Why do I need help? So I didn't ask for any help. I got myself in that situation. But a lot of mums in Australia, and I'm quite lucky, I've got family here, but a lot of our customers, they're expats or they're interstate mums and dads, and they don't have anyone around them. So the support is not as good, I don't think, compared to Hong Kong in that sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate both the psychological and physical changes women need to go through post-delivery.
Yeah, and I think one of the big ones is psychological. So especially for mums or dads who stay at home, it's quite common that what we call identity loss. A lot of the mums, and including myself, I felt like I knew what I was doing before. I felt very confident. I felt confident as an individual, and I still do things that make me happy. Whereas having a child is an abundance of joy, but I didn't really feel that happiness after I got out of the 3-month or 6-month haze. Because it's just that you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and you don't have a moment to yourself, and you're like, is this going to be my life? Just doing the same thing day in, day out, and I can't see who I am, and I've lost my identity.
And you got this hormone running all over the place.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think it's a combination for a lot of people.
When and how did you find out you had postnatal anxiety?
Yeah, so it was pretty obvious. So we were quite lucky. We stayed at a private hospital, so we had a lot of help for about 5 days that we stayed there, and then we got home, I think on day 5 after I gave birth, and I thought I was fine. I just felt really tired. But then I think we had a discussion with my husband about how he's gonna go back to work, I think the week after that, and all of a sudden I got so scared because I was just so tired. I just thought, how am I going to keep this baby alive? I can barely get up and walk. I think I'm not a particularly physically strong person, so I was just so tired. And then I started reading Dr. Google, which wasn't helpful at all. I can't remember what I put down, but some of it might be how to look after a baby all by yourself when there's no one around to help you. What if I'm too tired? And then because I didn't, like a lot of new parents, I didn't get to sleep. So normally I would be really rational and say, okay, well, you can do this and this and this. But because I didn't sleep, I kept on thinking about all these bad thoughts. And then the end, I was so scared that I won't be able to keep my baby alive. And I think it was probably 10 days after I gave birth, a night, I my brain was just going a bit. It was just too full on for me to take. So I asked my husband to drive me to the emergency department of the hospital, and I stayed there because I had crazy thoughts. Like, it was so vivid in my brain. I think one of it was I dreamed that I drowned Caden in baby milk, in my milk. But the irony is I didn't even have enough milk, so I'm not sure how is that possible, but it felt so real.
My wife had too much milk, on the other hand. Apparently that's not a good thing either.
No, it's really painful. Did she cope all right?
Yeah, she coped with it okay. So apparently, I don't know whether this is Chinese wisdom. It's definitely not scientific, or it could be scientific. So she had a lot of Chinese soup, like Chinese fish soup, before she delivered. Apparently that had helped with her milk supply. But having said that though, yeah, because I guess every baby is different, right? And the frequency of how frequent you need to nurse your baby also differs from baby to baby. So I think we were relatively lucky because Finn wasn't hungry all the time, but we've had friends where they had to nurse, especially during the first couple of months, right? They had to nurse every 1 to 2 hours. And, mentally, that was really challenging for a lot of the parents. And I remember one night, so my wife was really tired. And she, obviously, just like yourself, she's been nursing 24/7 and she hardly had any sleep. So one night I just told her, why don't you just sleep for 6-7 hours and just nurse him in the morning. When she woke up, she had mastitis and she was so painful. She had chills, she had high fever, and then we had to ask for help.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of complications and a lot of issues that you never expected would happen when you're raising a child.
Yeah, you think it's an advantage, and then it's not. Like, for someone like me who has very little milk, I thought that would be, we happen to have that much milk. But then I also hear from my other customers as well, what a painful experience it is. And, to already be so tired and then get extra pain on top of that and having to deal with extra issues is quite challenging.
Yeah. So how was the recovery?
How was my recovery?
Yeah, how was the recovery? So you mentioned you went to the mental hospital, you had a bit of anxiety. How did you recover?
Yeah, very well. So I was quite lucky. I stayed at the emergency mental health department for about 2 weeks, and I was lucky enough that I've got the right private health cover. So I went to a private hospital, and there it's dedicated to parents and bubs, and there they actually look after your mental health. They also teach you parenting skills as well. So they teach you how to sing nursery rhymes, they teach you any issues, feeding, and any knowledge that you need to know for that period. They've got a fully dedicated team teach you everything you need to know, as well as looking after your mental health. And so the recovery process, slow but very good, because I feel that I probably had a little bit of anxiety before that as a person. I was always maybe from time to time I was a little bit anxious, but I didn't know how to deal with that. Whereas the hospital stay really helped me learning skills on how to deal with anxiety in general. So the recovery process was really good. And as soon as I fixed my anxiety issue, I felt I had so much joy spending time with Caden. And, I felt so lucky to have him. Everything seems to be so clear after you recover. I think I say this to anyone who might be experiencing postnatal anxiety or depression right now, is that when you're in it, it's just so difficult. You think you'll never get out of it. But it only takes resilience and things like therapy, seeing a psychologist, but slowly over time, all little bits help. It helps me definitely see very clearly, and I'm definitely a much stronger person now than I was even before giving birth to Caden. I feel like I'm a much stronger person.
Mm-hmm. For people who are, I guess, in a similar situation as you were before, what advice would you give them? What should people think about before having a child?
Yeah, sure. So what people should think before having a child, I think this is an interesting one, but in general, I think if I was to do it over again, I would sit down and note down all the people that can support me mentally. So in Australia, this is probably more applicable from a physical sense. People can bring you food and all of that, but just even if you had, what did you call it, a confinement?
Yeah, confinement service. Yeah, confinement
service?
lady, yeah.
Service?
Yep.
Yeah, confinement service. Even if you have that, I would still list down the people who's going to give you that moral support. Any other way. Also, isolation is a big thing. So you note down all the people who you love that would come and visit you, and then like I would chat to them beforehand and say, I would love to have you, be involved after I give birth. And I would, if they're close enough, I would ask them to check in with me a week after I give birth, 2 weeks, so that when you're so lost in that busyness, someone, you've already got someone out there that you want to talk to that's going to check in with you and make sure you're going okay. And if you need help, then they will step in.
Yeah, the other part of the question is, if someone who believes they are experiencing some sort of anxiety or depression, what advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing is ask for help. Make sure your partner knows, or your husband or wife. Make sure they know what's happening. In Australia, there are a lot of help. There are helplines, and I imagine there will be similar services in Hong Kong. Reach out to your friends. I think the biggest thing is that I was surprised to learn that so many people around me actually had postnatal anxiety, depression, or just depression in general, but no one talks about it. So people think
it's one of those taboo things that no one really talks about it, but once someone opens up, it resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. So I think even if you think people might not understand, try to reach out to other mums, other dads who might not never talk about it, but reach out to them and share your experience. And they might actually have gone through it themselves, and they might be able to suggest who you could go to. The thing that was really helpful for me to go through this was my support network, even from unexpected people like my mum, because my mum is a very kind person, but I always thought that she is a bit stressed out, so I didn't want her to add to the stress. But surprisingly enough, when I opened up and I said, I'm actually going through a really difficult place now, I need you to calm down and help me through this. And she was the calmest person, and it was so helpful in my recovery. And then all the professional help around. And even if you have to, I was on medication for a little bit, and I was so scared because I didn't want to take the medication, because I thought, now it's official, if I take the medication, there's something wrong with me. But it really helped me in my recovery process. I'm off it now, but I think take whatever help you got. And the only person that I think I was the one that would stigmatize it myself, and I judged myself for it. But it's like an illness, like any other physical illness. It is so common in Australia. It's 1 in 5 women who give that has prenatal and postnatal depression, and 1 in 10 men. So it's just so common. So don't judge yourself, and ask for help, and you will recover. Most people do. Most people do really well, and they're stronger than, they become a stronger and a better person than before they experience it.
Yeah. Any second one on the horizon?
Good question. I don't know 100% yet. I think it would be nice to have a second one, but probably not immediately. And this is just us, but we said if it happens naturally at some point, then we'll take it. But if not, we're very happy. We're very blessed to have Caden. We can't be happier.
I always say I think it's a blessing to have a child. Parenting is challenging, but it's extremely rewarding once we know what we're doing. And I guess, and also think there's no perfect parent as such. Each and every day we can try to become a better parent. For me, it's a try and experience journey. We don't have all the answers to all the questions, but we can try and improve upon ourselves, what we've done yesterday, and how we can care for our children more. So thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us today. It's very inspirational, and I'm really glad to hear that you've recovered from your anxiety.
Thank you.
That by having people like you opening up more and telling their stories, it encourages people to also open up when they're facing issues, and to also, I guess, understand that there are actually a lot of support, and there are actually a lot of people who have gone through what you have gone through, and you're not alone. So I think your kid is very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
The Australian community is lucky to have you and also listen to your story. And thank you so much for sharing your time today.
I appreciate being able to share my stories with your audience. Thanks very much, Aaron.
Thank you. Have a nice day, mate.
You too. Bye.
Bye.